Good afternoon. My name is Michael Smith. I'm the Chairman and Executive Director with the Foundation for Autism Information and Research. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization based out of the Albany, New York area here. And we're here today to discuss the rapid increase in the rates of autism. Recent numbers from the Centers for Disease Control, 1 in 45 children now have autism. And this is going to cost our economy into the trillions of dollars. We also have other issues concerning various cuts in the New York State budget. There's been freezes to everything from early intervention to special education, summer school and preschool programs, and even massive cuts to our SUNY Albany autism program known as CARD. Today I would like to start with introducing some of our New York State legislators who live with autism every day. Joined with us today are Assemblyman Thomas Abinanti, Assemblyman Angelo Santa Barbara, Assemblywoman Marybeth Walsh, and Assemblywoman Miller here to discuss the autism epidemic that we have in our state and how we have to best address this to meet the needs in the future. So I'd like to start by first introducing Assemblyman Thomas Abinanti and to talk about these issues and what the legislature is doing.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you all for coming today. I want to start off by thanking the activists. That's kind of a strange term, but the people who care and the people who have found the time to try to do something about the problems that we face. As some of you know, I'm the father of a 17-year-old son who's been diagnosed with autism. But a lot of you don't know that I married my wife when she had a 14-year-old son who had CP and other conditions from birth. And I've had a chance to see the system, and I've seen the system fail. There are cases when it succeeds because people like my wife get involved, become the president of an ARC or some organization like that, work really hard, set up services for kids and for adults, but they do it against a bigger system that just doesn't seem to care. Whether we're talking about autism, whether we're talking about developmental disabilities, whether we're talking about physical disabilities, and all of the other conditions that people have that cause challenges for them to move forward like the rest of us. Take a look at what we're doing to early intervention, one of the most important programs. This administration has put every stumbling block possible in the way of providers providing services and getting paid for those services. Take a look at what happens when you go to preschool and the early stages of development. Some of the best places are places that have specific locations, not just itinerant assistants and teachers and whatever, but actually a location. And we've made it so difficult for those schools or whatever you want to call them, those sites, the site-based programs, to succeed. They're dropping out one after the other. I know the one that my son went to is no longer there. And now go into schools and take a look at what's happening to special ed. We've foolishly imposed a 2% tax cap, and that's squeezing our schools at the same time that we're not providing enough state aid to help these schools. And the first programs that the schools look to cut are the programs for kids with special needs. And then when a kid gets out of school, where does he go? I say he because most of the kids are guys. But there are some girls. So where do they go? Well, there's something that we call transition. There really isn't a transition program. Where is the transition program? There really isn't one. And if they're supposed to transition to adult life, where are they going to find that adult life? We've stopped building group homes. We've stopped setting up opportunities for people who have now gotten out of school. We have special act schools where kids with some little additional difficulties are supposed to be helped. We're not properly funding them. And we're finding that the kids who are over 21 are still in special act schools in violation of the law because there's no place else for them to go. And they don't have families to take care of them. So we look around now for housing. We're not building any housing. So we have people who are 80 years old taking care of their kids who are 55 and 60. Where are we going? What about Dayhab? Programs for people during the day. Working environments. We're not setting any of those up. We've basically decided in this state that we're only going to help some people. The New York is not a place that is hospitable for some of the vulnerable people who are our families and who deserve to be able to have a life like the rest of us. So we're here today, if for any reason at all, to call attention to the fact that New York has abandoned our most vulnerable people. And if you take a look at all of these different programs, this budget doesn't do anything to help. Nothing at all. People with special needs are not in any of the press releases. We talk about economic development. We talk about helping people. There's nothing at all about people with special needs. Even we're talking now about putting $50 million, $50 million into helping the people who help our kids and our families. Where's that money? Where's it coming from? It looks like right now we're going to pass an extender budget, so we're going to have to wait another 2 months before any of that money is available to pay people who do the hard job of taking care of our family members. They can do better by flipping hamburgers than they can by changing diapers. And that's a sad state of affairs. So we're here to call attention to this and to say it's time that the people who need the help get the help if we want to continue to call this the great state of New York. Thank you all for coming. I'll let my colleagues have something to say.
Our next speaker is Assemblyman Angelo Santa Barbara. Mr. Santa Barbara is also the parent of a child with autism, and he serves as the chairman of the New York State Committee on Autism Spectrum Disorders in the Assembly. Angelo?
Thanks, Mike. Thanks. It's great to see that we're assembling here to talk about something that's very important to me and to all of us, and we need to see more of this. This should be just the beginning, and I like to term this as we hear about autism awareness all the time. We really need to turn it into autism action. We need to start doing things. And as Tom described, these issues are not new. They've been around for a long time. We haven't been doing anything about it. And now it's time, whether it's through legislation, whether it's through funding, advocacy groups. I know we have a meeting with the speaker. We're talking about bringing some staff on board with expertise in these fields as well, which we don't have available to us right now. So these are very important issues that we have to advance, and I want to thank Mike for inviting me for arranging this press conference. He mentioned my son Michael. He was diagnosed when he was 3. Some of you might have seen him on my Facebook page. We try and include him in a lot of the work that we do because it's important. It's important that people see that as legislators, we deal with the same challenges our constituents do. And Michael's, although he's 15, just this morning, you know, when he gets up, I make his breakfast. I have to get him dressed, I have to brush his teeth. Now he's starting to grow a little bit of a beard, so we got to deal with that. So these are real challenges that our families are facing, real world challenges. He goes to the Wildwood School. Some of you may have heard of the Wildwood School. There's a list of people waiting to get in there. It's just not available. There's no room available because the funding is not there. And people are looking for more schools like that to be able to send their kids to get the education that they need, and it's not there. We talked about housing. That's one of my big concerns. You know, Michael's 15. You know, he's going to be 18. He's going to be in his 20s. He's going to be an adult. You know, what happens to him after that? Where does he go? And of course, my biggest fear is when I'm gone, who's going to take care of him? So my goal is to get him as independent as possible. And the services, there's a crisis right now for support services, just not available. So 1 in 68 is the number I got in my head, but Mike just informed me it's 1 in 45. So what does that mean? We're going to have 1 in 45 adults living in our society. We're just not ready. The services aren't there. Yesterday we celebrated World Autism Day. We went over to Puzzles Bakery in Schenectady. Now she has a great business model. She has a sister with autism. Sarah Mae Pratt owns the establishment. She hires only people with developmental disabilities. She has a staff of about 15 or 20. There's a list of more than 1,000 people that want to work there. why are we not doing more? Why are we not doing more of this? Why is that not being discussed up here? These are the questions that I have. This is a model that's working. This is a model that opens up the door, gives people opportunity. It's a very sustainable model. Why are we not talking about this more up here? So these are the questions that I have trouble with. Why aren't we investing in things that can actually help people? Let's take a look at what we're doing. Whatever's not working, let's look to find new things that are working. So that's one of the things Tom and I are going to do in the near future. There's a task force that we're looking to revive to start talking about these issues, to figure out what are the best models, where should we as legislators, where should we be investing our money, where should we be supporting programs of funding, what legislation is actually going to help. But a lot of that comes from groups like this, sharing the message, increasing the advocacy. And the advocacy has reached new levels. I talked about this yesterday. The Sesame Street character that has, they introduced Julia, I think her name is. She's a character that has autism. It's on something that's on TV, and introducing to kids at a young age what autism is. I think that advocacy really has reached new levels to see a program like that adopt a character that has a developmental disability. I think the advocacy is working, the awareness is working, but now it's time to turn it into action. So I want to commend Mike and the group here, because we're taking action by doing this, and we need to do more of this. So this is a beginning, not an end. We need to ramp up our efforts. I need to start taking some real action on these issues. So thank you for having me.
I'd just like to say something briefly about the rates of autism. We've been hearing about it. I mean, 10, 11 years ago, we sat in a hearing talking about the rates going from 1 in 250 to 1 in 166. And there's a group of people out there that still want to refer to autism and the increases as being broader diagnostic criteria. That's been proven to be false time and again by epidemiological studies that have been done in states like California. To just look at the math in this room right now, there's 150 members in our New York State Assembly, and we have 3 standing here right now that have kids with autism. That would put it at a 1 in 50 number. So anyone saying that these numbers aren't real needs to look around, look a little bit closer right in their own backyard. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. She's a newly elected member of the Assembly from Saratoga County, where I'm from, and I'd like to introduce Marybeth Walsh from Saratoga County.
Thanks. Thank you, Mike. So Autism Awareness Month is this month. It's April, and I'm here to talk a little bit about, as Assemblymember Angelo Santa Barbara said, that we need to move from simple awareness to advocacy. I think we have. There is a lot more advocacy than there was when my son was born. They say that if you've met one person with autism, then you've met one person with autism. And so my son Terry is 24, and he is along the spectrum at a very high functioning level, thank God. He was able to graduate with a local diploma from Burn Hills Ballston Lake. Local diplomas, as we know, are not really available anymore, or not the way that they used to be. He has a job. He's working about 30 hours a week, but he's working with our family. So we've been able to provide that workforce opportunity for him. And he's able to live on his own independently with supports coming in and keeping an eye on him and making sure that everything's getting done appropriately. Again, we've been able as a family to be able to push in and provide those supports for him. So luckily, my family has not had to rely upon the government to provide anything to us. We've been able to take a look at Terry, really identify his strengths, his weaknesses, and his abilities, and to try to create a life for him that I think he does find very satisfying. I understand that my family is particularly blessed, and I know because as an attorney for the children, mostly in Saratoga County, I've been practicing in family court for 10 years. Many of my clients, many of my young clients, fall somewhere on the autism spectrum, and I understand that I'm in a unique position, and I think I would just say that this is such a if there ever was a nonpartisan issue, it is the issue with autism. It's not Republican, it's not Democrat. It's just very simply that we need to address the growing numbers of autistic in our community, in our state. We need to help them the same way we would help anybody with any other kind of disability. And the way I look at it is, as a society, it's the right thing to do. But even if you're just being mercenary about it, you're either going to pay now to help them, or we're going to be paying forever, for a lifetime, for these individuals, whether it's providing adequate housing, workforce opportunities, proper medical treatment, and lifetime care. And I really can relate to the parents that have said that they're worried about what should happen to their children, their adult children, if they should pass away before them. It's incredibly worrisome for me, and I have a lot of family supports. It must be just tragically upsetting and worrisome to parents who don't have that. So I've come to the Assembly to do a number of things, but this topic, this issue with autism, is really at the top of my list of things that I want to be able to accomplish during my time in office. I've been so grateful to have been visited by a number of people in my office talking about this issue, and I've gone out into my community to visit Wildwood, which is in my district, to visit Crossroads Center for Children, which is just outside my district, to see the really good work that they're doing and to hear their feedback, which is, as the Assemblyman said, they're not getting paid a living wage. The staff that they're able to hire at some of these great schools, the minute that they can leave to get a public school job that pays better, they go. So a place like Wildwood ends up being a training ground for professionals who are then going to leave and are not going to stay. So we have to do a better job as a community, as a state, and we need to continue to do things like this to raise awareness. And I'm ready to bring the fight on. So I'm just waiting to find out what exactly we need to push first. But I'm ready to go. So thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Walsh. Our next speaker is Melissa Miller. She's an Assemblywoman from Nassau County, and she also has a strong passion for people with developmental disabilities as well.
Hi. So my son does not have autism, but because I have a child with disability, I am approached and called every single day, not just from families within my district, but from families all over Nassau County, Suffolk County, with children that do have autism. And I have some of my closest friends, because of the circles that we've traveled in this world, in this life, and Oliver's been in classes, most of his classes, including the class that he's in right now currently in high school, are mostly filled with children with autism. So this is something that is especially dear to me, even though technically Oliver himself does not have autism. I'm well entrenched with all of my friends, and have the same passion to do something to not just bring awareness, but to do something. Because I don't feel that I can speak personally as a parent, I wanted to read something from a friend of mine who just this weekend, because it was Autism Awareness Month, she posted something on Facebook, and I thought that it was very compelling and moving. So, April 1st, the first day of Autism Awareness Month. This beautiful face, my beautiful boy, has autism. What does that mean? Truly, I can never put into words what autism has taken from him. To give you a peek into his life and how he struggles, I can tell you that on Tuesday he needed anesthesia just to get cavities filled, because he can't keep his mouth open to get them fixed, because he doesn't know what a cavity is, because he doesn't understand, because he is scared. I can tell you that on Thursday he spent an hour hitting himself and me, and I don't know why. All I can do is try and keep him safe until it passes. I can tell you that yesterday we drove around in the car watching Sesame Street videos because we needed a way to pass the time. I can tell you that this weekend he has no plans, no karate, no band, no practice, no activities, no friends at 15. I can tell you that on Tuesday he will have surgery again because his heel cords are so damaged due to significant sensory issues and an inability to stand with his foot flat on the ground. His feet have not grown in years because he stands only on his toes. He is 15 years old and wears a size 4. He has calluses and cuts all over his hands and knuckles because he rubs them constantly and cannot stop. This is autism. It sucks. It causes problems in all areas of life and in ways you would never imagine. My son was robbed of what his life should be. It is not fair to him, and it never will be. Yet he perseveres. He wakes up with a smile. He forgives me for when I am not my best. He hugs so hard that you can feel how much he loves you, even without words. Jackson is the best, most admirable, most inspiring person in my life. He has guided the way for me, and I hope he knows that I am so proud of him. So I will try every day to make a difference in his honor. I encourage everyone to do something during the month of April to help an individual with autism, because trust me, they need it. This is the mom of a 15-year-old who's still battling with this every single day. We need to do more. I am ready. That's one of the things that got me here, was my platform with disabilities, and I can't wait to take this on. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. You know, I'd just like to make a really quick point about that compelling story about the child's feet not growing. A lot of kids with autism do walk up on their tippy toes, and with the help of a licensed physical therapist, that therapist can teach them to walk back down on the soles of their feet. However, the physical therapy is not covered by insurance. It's usually capped out at 10 or 20 visits. We tried to get this done in the legislation that was passed in 2011. I know Assemblyman Abinanti has a bill right now addressing this exact issue. So by not providing this therapy, we're literally denying these kids a pain-free life. And I think that's just horrific, and I think the legislature can do better in making sure that these kids can live a pain-free life. I want to thank the legislators for all being here today and expressing how they live with autism and developmental disabilities on a daily basis in their families. Our next speaker is John Gilmore. He's the Executive Director of the Autism Action Network, a 501c4 organization specializing in lobbying at the federal, state, and national level on autism issues. And turn it over to John.
In addition to that, I'm also the father of a 17-year-old son, Luke, who's diagnosed with autism. And I think, like most of the people in this room, I think we're all sort of surprised that we don't have a budget yet. And so I would like to spend my time talking a little bit about the problems with the current budget that the legislators are wrangling with right now. Some of these aids here can help us. I think this chart over here really illustrates the problem. Since 2011, we have seen a 30% decrease in funding for the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities at the same time that the number of people who need these services are increasing. And that's basically the model we've seen when it comes to services for people with developmental disabilities and autism in the state for the last, well, since 2011. And if we take a look at the current budget, there's an additional 2% cut proposed for OPWDD. And this is happening at the time, and if you take a look at the chart over here, that just addresses autism. We're seeing a 10 to 15% increase in the number of people diagnosed with autism in New York. That's essentially an exponential growth curve, and we've been seeing that for 25 years without abatement. Right? So the demand is simply skyrocketing, and the investments that need to be made simply aren't being made. In addition to these cuts in the current budget, we see things such as the budget for special education preschool has been frozen. The budget for special education summer school has been frozen. Early intervention, as some of the members of the legislature addressed, the budget has been frozen for, I think, over a decade at this point. And one thing that's important to understand about early intervention is that early intervention service providers have not had a raise since 1994. Right? Consequently, there are large areas of the state where there simply are no providers. We're talking about disabled children in need of intensive therapy at the time of life when that therapy can do the most good for them, and they're put on waiting lists because the resources simply aren't being contributed or taken care of here in Albany, and that's got to change. So any aspect of serving the needs of developmental disabilities is simply not being addressed. And that has to change, and hopefully with the leadership of the members of the Assembly that we have here today, maybe we'll see some improvement with this budget before it's actually finalized, and maybe this can be the start of something much bigger and much better for people with autism and other developmental disabilities. So I thank you all for being here.
Our next speaker is Mary Holland. Mary is a law professor at NYU University, and she's the director of EBCALA, known as the Elizabeth Burt Center for Autism Law and Advocacy. Mary?
Thank you, Mike. I'm no longer the director, but I'm a board member, and I'm also a parent of a former director, and I'm the parent of a 19-year-old son on the autism spectrum. And I know when I first heard the word autism, I honestly had never really known what the word was. It was really new to me. I think all I knew was Rain Man. And over that time, as we say, it's now 1 in 45 people. And that's a CDC number that's woefully out of date. The real number is probably more like 1 in 30. This is just not something we're going to get away from. And it's great that we have Autism Awareness Day. There's nothing wrong with lighting it up blue. But that is so far like not going to deal with the problem that we have. This is it's a public health crisis. I don't think there's anybody in this room that doesn't know somebody with autism, and I frankly don't think there's a single person in this building who doesn't know somebody with autism and doesn't recognize from the most severely affected to the highest functioning that there are real problems and that those people need real supports, and it's going to take a real infrastructure. So I'm here to say, you know, we do have to move past autism awareness to we have to deal with it. We have to deal with autism. And one of the things we have to go beyond, even in just dealing with it, is looking at that line showing it's a steady increase from the mid-90s. There are no genetic epidemics. They don't exist. We have to be looking at environmental factors, and we're going to have to, as a society, start looking soberly at what do we do to prevent this. We can do this. We know that this has happened in our lifetimes. So if it's happened, we can find the causes. We can turn this around. So thank you for all of you being here and caring about this issue.
Thank you, Mary. Our next speaker is Lisa Rudley. She's with New York State Allies for Public Education and Create Spirit US, which is a jobs program to get people with autism and disabilities into the creative industries. And Lisa's here to talk about education issues that are a very important issue for all of us who have kids with autism right now. Lisa?
So I'm Lisa Rudley. I have 3 children. I live in Ossining, New York, Westchester County. And my middle son was diagnosed at 4 years old on the spectrum, and he's now 15 years old. And through the hard work and sweat and tears of a lot of supports, he's doing very well today in middle school. But I'm here to talk about also graduation and employment opportunities for kids and young adults in our state and around the country. On top of our autism epidemic, and I wholeheartedly agree with Mary Holland that this is just not a genetic increase. This is something going on in the environment, and we need to get to the bottom of it. We have a major crisis. Students not graduating in New York State and not finding meaningful employment. Graduation with a high school diploma and employment indisputably go hand in hand. The barriers for students to graduate in New York are the highest barriers in the whole country, making it nearly impossible for even students with disabilities to graduate in this state. To even get a local diploma is very difficult for students with disabilities, let alone a Regents diploma. So while the Board of Regents, who is responsible for education policy in New York State, has made some great inroads in helping students with disabilities get a high school diploma, there's so much more to be done. Students with autism and other disabilities really need access to meaningful, gainful employment. And we have a problem on both sides. It's the skill building as well as the culture of companies throughout our country. I mean, I started working at a nonprofit called Creative Spirit US, and I've spoken to job agencies, job placement agencies, job coaches. There are young adults ready and willing and able to work. We have a culture in companies and throughout, not only New York State, throughout the country, that have no pathway for students or candidates with disabilities. So we need to change that culture. And I love the model of, someone was talking about the model where in Schenectady, was it? I mean, amazing bakery. And this is a model. The empirical data is there that the productivity of these businesses and of the culture rises with hiring, you know, people with disabilities. There's no question, not only anecdotally, but there's empirical evidence on that. So I will leave you with this today, a fact. 85% of individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities are unemployed, 85%. And while many companies have committed to being diverse and inclusive, that doesn't always include disabilities. And if it does include disabilities, it's not enough. So we as a society, we need to work together to change that, because this is a societal problem. And we all have to come together and action, and we have to deal with the problem. And thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So I just wanted to thank everyone for being here today, and we hope that the legislature will fully fund education, early intervention, all these other programs that have come in. And I'm sorry, we still have one more speaker, and I really apologize, Wendy. My good friend Wendy Harness here, who I've known for a long time. Oh, you didn't? Oh, Lisa was just talking about. Okay.
Lisa said,
Okay, I will introduce her because she's just a great individual. I've known Wendy for over 10 years now. And Wendy's also the parent of 2 kids with autism, and our kids go to the same school together. And every time we've asked Wendy to come down here and help us out with stuff, she has. So I did want to offer Wendy the opportunity to speak because she's also passionate on education issues and knows what that entails. Wendy?
I'm the parent of one person with autism and another child with PDD. I am very concerned about the state of diploma options in our state. It's very difficult to gain a local diploma, and there have been experts who have sat in on, I have a son in high school, and on some of his classes where half the kids have IEPs, which means they receive special education services in school. They have an individualized education plan, and half of the students do not. And in 9th grade English, it was reported back to me from this psychologist that the level of material that these kids were learning was like a college level course. And I just don't think that's developmentally appropriate for our 9th grade students to be expected to learn college level material in their English class and then be expected the trajectory to pass a Regents exam at that level in order to get a high school diploma. It's not right. We're going to end up with people who want to work and want to gain employment and maybe become a fireman or a policeman or a plumber or go to college, and they can't because they can't get a diploma. When I was in high school, you didn't need to pass algebra to get a high school diploma, and I have a lot of friends who did not go that path, and they own beautiful homes and have satisfying careers and are able to support their families, and they're very happy. I lost my train of thought. It does affect these kids. And I think another problem for our society as a whole is we kind of look down our noses at some of these, blue-collar professions, like a plumber or a builder. My father's a builder, and my parents have always had beautiful homes, and I wanted for nothing as a child. And I just feel that our society looks down at these trades, these highly, trades that would be great for a lot of people with learning disabilities. And there's a big-time shortage for people skilled in these areas. And I think as a society, we need to stop looking down our noses and only, it's not about everyone doesn't necessarily want to go to college and go to that, take that path in their lives. And that's okay. Everybody deserves to be respected in their field. And I think attitudes need to change.
Thanks, Wendy. This concludes our press conference. I'd like to thank the media and others for attending, and thanks for all for coming. Thanks.